Hey, all, welcome to this episode of A Good Problem to Have. I'm your host, Tyler Olson, and this is part two of a conversation I'm having with Dr. Noah Kaufman. Last week, we talked about cough care and the business development that you've been in, Noah. And now, I, anyway, it's good to talk to you again. I wanted to talk further because we didn't just, obviously cough care is like a fairly recent development, at least publicly, but in months past, you and I have traded barbs on like certain things like Bitcoin and tax planning. And then something you said a few months ago, I was talking about ways like on Twitter X, we're talking about ways to manage tax liability. And you chimed in and said something about some very niche ways in which one can reduce their tax liability. I wanted to hear what those things are and how, and then also like how you are building in your Bitcoin investment and like its place in your life. How
Yeah.
these because I think these two things are related, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they certainly are. And first I want to say I really enjoyed our conversation last week, Tyler. And I never got to say it, but cough care is a really good problem to have. So,
Amen.
yeah, and so are I mean, some of these things like taxes are not a good problem to have. Um, so this will be an interesting conversation as well because, like I think you mentioned Bitcoin and you mentioned uh, tax strategies, and immediately 90% of our colleagues are like eye rolls and like oh, okay, all right, let's what else can I watch or see, like let's do the next podcast. But I want to give a very even-handed and fair um way, approach to this, like an impartial way that I view these things. And I think they're related, to answer your question, because they both have to do with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which I think we're all kind of bestowed as being like Americans, and living in the greatest country that ever existed. That has a lot of problems, but the most free place where people can express themselves. And like, I'm a patriot, like not in like I've got like a fly in here, but I really believe in the vision of America, and in what we can be. And I think it's like a kind of a self-actualized approach to society and living. And I think at its best, it's really, really, really good. And at its worst, it's bad, obviously. And there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of division
Mhm.
nowadays. But I think if we all remember that we each have a right to live freely and pursue happiness, like that's our fundamental rights, and that's why this whole country was born. And if you look at the history, we all want to be free, and I think that's good. That's a good thing, and we have strived for freedom from the early days. And so I think that, if you look at our early history, that can help us reflect on the importance of both tax strategies, and Bitcoin, or alternative investments. And so, starting first with tax strategies, I would say that on, when our country started, there were no taxes. As a matter of fact, there were no taxes until like 1913 or something, which was quite a long time. And then the taxes started as about like 1%, or something like that. And they were in conjunction with, like, we created the Federal Reserve around that time. And just there was a growing need for centralization and making roads and making railways and public services. And I think taxes were good. Before that, it was all, taxes from, funding from tariffs and all that sort of thing. And taxes definitely helped our country grow powerful in many, many ways, and support the ideals of, American values, and helped export those values and freedom around the world. And I could be wrong about all of this, but this is like what I've learned and what I've studied in history and my view on it.
Hmm.
And what I would say is that, taxes are a tool that can be very powerful in a good way, and I think they were very good, and they helped fund, the Second World War, like the World War, to try and stop, like the killing of. I mean, look, I grew up Jewish, as a Jewish person, and I'm not religious now, but I grew up with all that, and I saw videos of mass graves and skeletonized bodies being, lined up and shot, and like that was very, very disturbing for a young person to see that. And whether or not that was right or not for me to see it, it was part of this like never forget campaign that was very effective.
Hmm.
And for me, seeing something like that, the atrocities, and what we had to stand up to as a world, and how scary it was, at that time, that's like very, very powerful. And so taxes helped fund that war. It wouldn't have happened without taxes. We had to raise taxes, and taxes have gone up pretty much ever since. And we started making social programs, and we started really caring for the weak and underprivileged and all these things, which is also very important. So okay, everybody knows this kind of stuff, to some degree or another, but taxes can go too far, just like, medication can go too far. And I think it can become unhealthy. And we have set up a system, whether we like it or not, that benefits the people who understand the system. And, when you have a 70,000 page tax code, or 90,000, or whatever, it's like massive, right? It's like the tax code, if you stacked it up in papers, could go like halfway to the moon or something. It's insane.
Yeah.
So like only a small part of that deals with W-2 earners, and the rest deals with businesses and what you can do to save money on taxes legally. And so having a profound understanding of that, you can actually really save a lot of money on taxes, and then put that to really good use.
Hmm.
Um, so like I could create cough care, and that sort of thing. And as long as you're operating within inside the law, well, maybe the laws are bad, and you could argue that the laws are bad, but why on earth wouldn't you follow the letter of the law and take advantage of the law as much as possible to reduce your tax burden so that you and your family can enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? So
Mm.
I'll stop there for a moment, but that is my overriding, approach to taxes and tax strategy. And yeah, that's the first thing. That's my entry.
Okay. Yeah, I can appreciate where you're coming from. The way I view the tax code is that it is a game, and we are the players. And if this is the game, then play it however you wish to, legally. And I have like and I know that the way I'm saying it sounds like, well, it's very clear you're either following the rules or you're not. Like there are some things where things are a bit gray. Things that are not gray are like maxing out your 401k, and if you're self-employed, you got yourself a high income, maybe supplement with a cash balance plan. And if you've got a massive mortgage, um obviously there's some limitations there, but like you've got a lot of interest expense, your interest expense, you can itemize your deductions. Like there's ways that you can reduce your tax liability, so you should do that. Those are very non-gray area things. um but i i was I was struck by, I purposely didn't like pull up all the posts and stuff because I wanted this to just
Yeah.
end in conversation. What sort of things, what sort of ways that do you think people don't immediately realize are ways in which they could better manage their tax liability that you want to share?
Well, the first and most important thing is I don't think people understand that taxes are a negotiation. Taxes are a negotiation between you and the government. And the government is an incredible, malallocator of capital. The government is extremely inefficient. It's wrought with fraud and problems. And so for every dollar that you give to the government of your hard-earned money, the government is wasting a certain amount of it. And I don't know what the amount is. I'm sure somebody could tell us. Maybe it's 50%, maybe it's 90% is wasted. Maybe it's only 10%. I don't know. Actually, you might know. I don't know. I'm sure those numbers like exist or have been argued about. But let's say for the sake of argument that some of it is being wasted.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you could apply that dollar better, if you could apply that dollar better to society, then would society benefit more from the government um, allocating it or you allocating it? And so like with cough care, I have employees. I'm going to grow this thing. I'm going to employ a lot of people. And in a day and age where everybody's worried about losing jobs because of AI and all this stuff, like don't be like people need really good paying jobs with honest leaders that are going to like appropriately value them and pay them well.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I'm in favor, and that can be abused, and people can also abuse the heck out of it, and have zero morality and just take advantage of people. So look,
Mm-hmm.
these things are complicated, but I think to answer your question, without getting specific into like actual like Augusta rules and all these like little tax loops and tricks and stuff, suffice it to say, if you fundamentally believe that there is waste in the government and that there's like a lot of waste, which I think there is a lot
Mm-hmm.
of waste and even potentially fraud, then it doesn't feel good to work until June to give half of your money to the government.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a 70,000 page tax code that, like you said, it's a game for better or worse. And now if you understand that taxes are a negotiation and that you're actually lending the government money all year at like no interest, then it becomes like an insane situation. And once you realize that, and you realize that you have a lot of legal tools on your side, anybody who's like making any sort of real money or contribution to society, those rules were created by other people who were elected to create rules that you are supposed to follow as a taxpayer.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes a question of like, look, I don't want to worry about it. Like I just want to be as safe as possible. I don't want to negotiate. I just want to do what everybody else does. And most people are like, I don't want to think about taxes. I don't understand them. I'm scared I'm going to get audited. I'm scared of this, that, and the other thing. My father he he raised me and he said, look, if you're not being audited, you're not trying hard enough. and
Oh.
and and so I come from a family of, look, Papa Kaufman is the ultimate American.
Mm-hmm.
And God bless his soul, like he's an amazing dude. He's just amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
he is given to charity, he takes care of people, and he's loving, and he has been a good capital allocator.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I would say that the most important thing is the starting point. And so if you change your mindset to realize that taxes are a negotiation with the government
Mm-hmm.
and with society, then you just have to know the rules of the game and you start negotiating and you start thinking about what's best for society, what's best for my family, what's best for and how do I play this game and how aggressively do I play it and where do I draw the lines and an individual question for everybody. And I am not as aggressive as most people, but there's billionaires paying $0 in taxes. Like, is that fair? No.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not. It's not fair for society or whatever, but those are the rules. And you
Yeah.
can you can set yourself up so that you pay. I pay more than I pay a lot in taxes, and I pay more than a lot of billionaires. I've paid millions of dollars in taxes. And like where has that money gone? Like and so anyway, again, I'll stop there, but it's it's a powerful kind of change when you start to think about this as a negotiation with society or the government, and that you actually have a negotiable starting point. And I think that's really important being an American.
I can tell this is a struck chord for you. You
Oh
have
yeah.
you've had probably a good history of thoughts and feelings on the topic. And like I can see what you mean when you say it's almost like it's not to say like you're Robin Hood or like it does feel like a Robin Hood approach because it's like, well, they don't know what they're doing. I have a I have a niche way in which I do know what I'm doing and it can build good. Um I don't know if like one is necessarily the result of the other, but I can see where you could like being able to decide I'm going to be a good steward of my own financial and tax decisions, and I know I'm going to learn the rules of the tax code game. I'm going to I'm going to either learn what I need to or I'm going to bring in the people that are going to help me to know how to play this game and be
Yeah.
finding that right balance of because I do actually I have had clients in the past who feel bad about getting the tax deduction for their 401k contribution.
Well, that's how the system's designed. It's designed to make you feel guilty and scared.
Yeah.
So it's not their fault.
So yeah, no, I mean it's like there's a it's a I don't know how to describe it. It's a problem and not a good one. So I think it's good to like have these honest conversations about advocating for not just ourselves, but for those in our care and those with who are within our reach that we can assist. And I think if you take that approach, it's not just about well, what's legal and ethical per se, but also what how are these decisions that one decides to make with their tax planning decisions, how will they sleep, how well will a given person sleep with a given set of decisions. And the way that you're describing it, you're like, well, I'm going to arrange the game. I'm going to know the game. I'm going to figure out the rules. I'm going to play by it in the way that my conscience feels good playing the rules and like the risks that I'm taking on. And then I'm going to apply what assets are in my hands to do fulfilling work and like help to create value in other people's lives. Am I reading you right?
Yeah, well, that's like a very ends justifies the means sort of uh, philosophical standpoint. And I will say that, look, for better or for worse, everybody in their life has lied at some point or cheated at some point, and we all have like moral capital, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is Mother Teresa or is 100% clean, and we're all human beings, and we strive for like an ideal version of ourselves that looks in the mirror and says, I'm proud of you, I love you," and we strive for to be able to sleep well at night, right? And the thing is that's totally independent of these decisions that you have to make. It seems like it's like directly predicated on these decisions of these like moral and ethical decisions, but it's not. It, that's like so like the tax code has made more liars and cheaters than any single thing in human history.
Mm-hmm.
Period. There's nobody who hasn't lied or cheated in some way on their taxes or done something in their life that wasn't morally questionable on a panel of nuns. Okay, so like and by the way, nuns haven't either, and neither has anybody in religion. So I think part of we all have an idealized view of ourselves, and I think in medicine we do that to a fault, and there's a lot of ego, and there's a lot of holding ourselves to the highest absolute standard, and that's great. I think it's good for a lot of ways, and it's good for the nobility of the profession, which has taken a hit, and that's a totally different conversation. But I think that when you boil down to it, that sort of moral high ground puts physicians at a massive disadvantage because attorneys, business people, politicians, lawyers, they are playing a different game than you, where morality is a game that's flexible and doesn't really, and they sleep fine at night on their stacks of on their mattress made of $100 bills. And doctors do not. Doctors pay. I know an orthopedic guy. He's a close friend of mine. He's making over $2 million a year. He pays over $1 million in taxes every year.
Mm.
That is mind blowing to me. Okay,
Yeah.
and and almost every other lawyer, politician, business person is absolutely maximized with their tax strategy,
Mm.
and they're paying $100,000 or $200,000 on $2 million, and they're using captive insurance. They're using all sort of restricted property trusts. They're using every Augusta rule analog. They're using everything, and they've got an incredible team. Not just a CPA, but like a tax accountant or a tax lawyer. And so, I actually made a business many years ago that's still doing very well. It's called Physician Tax Solutions. I'm no longer part of the day to day or anything like that, but we made
Hmm.
this business to help physicians pay less money in taxes, so they could be, because I believe my colleagues are more moral, better tax allocate or better capital allocators than all these business people. The politicians are making $40 million on their stock trades and then keeping most of it. And so, yeah, there's a lot of morality that creeps in. There's a lot of questions of where you draw the line. But I think people are being put, especially in medicine, physicians are being pushed more and more and more towards the risk and towards the questions of, like, well, what am I morally okay with? What's allowed?
Hmm.
Maybe I should play this game. And so now there's huge societies like white coats, whatever it is, and people are educating themselves about what rules they can do, and like, and then they try and morally fulfill the rules in an ethical way, and I think that's great. And so, yeah, I mean, it's look, if you're making $600,000 a year, I don't care what you invest in. If you're paying 300 grand a year, then your single biggest, like, massive boost to your bottom line and your lifestyle and everything is if you save $200,000 a year on taxes. Okay, period.
Yeah.
And that's why I made this business, and, like, and like, I would rather allocate the capital myself as a more moral, more ethical, you know, entrepreneur and human being.
Mhm.
Then I just don't fundamentally trust the people who are managing our fiduciaries for our funds, and so in government, and yeah, so it opens up a lot of doors. But I believe in self sovereignty and the ability to make your own decisions about your wealth. And so, for any physician out there paying over 30% in taxes, you need to really evaluate how you're playing the game and how you're negotiating, because you are literally giving away your hard-earned money and your time, and you're being taken advantage of, like, in a huge way, by everyone.
I know a doc in California who's making close to 2 million. He's an employee though,
Yeah, yeah, it's slave labor.
and there's
It's
no, like, in that role, there is nothing nothing that he can do. I mean, he's got the 403B, he's got the 457B, he's got the HSA, he's got his itemized deductions. That's it.
If
But
you're a W-2 worker, you are literally working for someone else. No matter how much you make, you're literally working for someone else and creating way more value for them. So he's
yeah,
probably creating $20 million in revenue for a system or
mm,
more.
yeah,
But it's hard, because maybe that's the only opportunity. Maybe if he went out on his own, it'd be a big headache and he'd make a lot less, or whatever.
yeah,
But the thing is, he's actually not completely tied, because if you've got that much weight that you can throw around, if you even just take make an arrangement with your hospital system or your boss, because you're a worker for somebody else. You've got a boss at that point. If you're not on your own and you're not independent and you're not free and you're a W-2 worker and you've got those heavy of golden handcuffs, you have to understand you've got some negotiating power. And you can say, hey, look, let's make my call schedule a 1099 type of situation. I
Mm-hmm.
want 20% of my income to come in as 1099. And you can just negotiate, and you've got a lot of negotiating power. And you're like, look, I've done all this, and if you can slice off part of your income, because then if you take 20-30% of your income and make it 1099 or business income, you can
Mm-hmm.
protect 100% of that. You will pay zero taxes on that if you're a W-2 worker. Zero. Zero. You can protect all of that money for your family. And so, like, if you're making $2 million and you're a W-2 worker and you have zero 1099 or zero business income, you need to, like, real quick get somebody who knows what they're doing, hire a consultant, hire a tax team, hire attorneys, and negotiate your way into some business income, and then all that business income is protectable. Period. And without even with zero moral turpitude.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is something he can do, isn't there? Yeah. Yeah.
He's just not doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like so many, like you and all your colleagues, and like, I mean, you're a bit of a the. I gotta ask you about the Series 65 because you mentioned that last week. I'm like, wait a minute. So I'll get back to that, but like, with a few exceptions such as yourself, most people who are in medicine, their minds are entirely filled with just medicine and not business. And so the idea of, I'm making four, five, six, $700,000 a year. It's it's a good situation. It's a good problem to have to like in this case, like this doctor paying $1 million in taxes. Yeah, that's like a massive problem. But he also is making like his take home pay. He's after taxes is like $1 million, right? So like there's like this sense of, I mean, complacency. I don't even know if that's the right word, but that's the closest one I can come to, because the brain is filled with not business and not finance and not tax understanding. It's built, with medicine in mind, and then there is a really nice living, right? And so, but I think that is a huge hurdle for a lot of doctors to overcome because they're like, I'm comfortable and I'm comfortable with this income, and I'm very uncomfortable going down this path of being like, let's do some unique tax strategies. So I think it's tough.
That's totally fair. That's so fair, and that is like the counter argument. And look, if you're happy and you've got enough money and you're complacent and you're storing away money and you're happy with the $1 million a year you're taking home, which who wouldn't be, and you don't have cash flow problems. Not many doctors are in that situation. And for every doctor who's making $1 million, there's 100 doctors, making 200,000, 300,000, or even $400,000, and then even if you're making $400,000 in today's world and you're paying $200,000 and your take home is $200,000, well, then you've got rent or you've got mortgage and then you've got this, that, and the other thing. And you're still, I know people making $400,000 or $500,000 who are living paycheck to paycheck.
Oh yeah.
So, like if you're complacent and you're happy and you don't want to go down a route, then necessity. What do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Like if you don't need to reinvent anything, or you're happy, then okay, yeah, don't do anything. Like pay pay an outsized share, pay way more than business people making 2 million, or politicians making 2 million, or lawyers making 2 million. Like you don't have to worry about it. Like feel good about yourself, and don't and just pay more than other people in your situation. Pay a lot more
Mm-hmm.
and just enjoy life. And if it doesn't bother you, then who cares about fair or whatever? You're blessed, and
Mm-hmm.
that's great. I mean, that's like a very Zen. That's like a Buddhist kind of. If you don't care that everybody else is paying less than you, and their families are growing, and they're able to afford more, that's fine. So
Mm-hmm.
I support that, and I think that that's a very powerful counter argument that is 100% valid.
But like, to counter my own counter argument, whenever I do show people the way that cash flows with, like, you got your gross income, when they see how thick that bar is that shows the tax liability, all of a sudden the interest and desire to be like, well, maybe I could be a business owner, all of a sudden it's like, maybe it's worth the hassle. So it kind of depends. Everyone's different, but I think
America.
Go ahead.
Sorry. It's a perfect way to say it. I mean, America was literally created to fund risk takers, to fund good capital allocators. The tax system was literally created for business owners and entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
not for W-2 workers, period.
Yeah. So I think, for those of you listening, you're thinking about like how you can craft your career in medicine. There are ways to create business income that are not making you like you're starting cough care. It doesn't have to be that to that degree of like, I'm starting my own independent practice. There's, like you mentioned, like segmenting off a portion of your income that is going to be 1099, creating a consulting work, expert witness work,
short-term rental.
Short-term rental, or like call schedule, like segment that off with an employer, be like, this portion is going to be 1099, and then you've got this money that is treated differently from a tax standpoint, and that's the beginning of some more beneficial and needle moving tax planning. So
It's the beginning of sovereignty. It's the beginning of being your own sovereign person, and it's the beginning of freedom. It's the beginning of having multiple LLCs and businesses and silos. It's the beginning of having a holding company and all those LLCs reporting, K1s to the holding company, and then the K1, and then the holding company is a pass through to you, and you getting one consolidated K1. And it's the beginning of restricted property trusts. It's the beginning of captive insurance. It's the beginning of creating a life where you are responsible for every decision, and you get more of your capital. You get to keep more of what you earn because you're a leader, and because you are sovereign, and are choosing freedom over W-2 slavery.
Yeah, speaking of sovereignty, I want to hear what your thoughts are on Bitcoin. But again, I think this is its own conversation. So why don't we pick this up soon? It won't be next week for those of you listening. It'll be in the next few weeks or so, I think. But would you be up for that, Noah, if we could talk about this separately?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it, especially because I know everybody's rolling their eyes and they're like, Bitcoin, oh, okay. I'm out. But, I think it would be a very, very interesting philosophical discussion. And if people have an open mind, then it would be worth talking about.
Okay. Yeah. No, the point of this podcast is is for doctors to be able to have an open discussion about the challenges and problems that they're trying to deal with, and learning about things that are even like unfamiliar or even a little uncomfortable. So I think it's all good. So yeah,
it's a good problem to have.
Amen to that. All right, Noah. Well, thanks a lot for this conversation, and thanks everyone for listening. And we'll be back next week.
Thanks, Tyler.
Take care.